Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Flex podcast presented by PrizePicks. I'm your host, Samantha Previte. On today's episode of 21 Questions, I am so happy to be joined by the one and only Jamey Eisenberg, who is an NFL and fantasy football analyst at CBS Sports, who you can find all over CBS Sports HQ, on Fantasy Football Today, and on Twitter at Jamey Eisenberg. Welcome to the Fantasy Flex, Jamey. How was your week 14?
Week 14 was great, Samantha. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. This should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I know we've done a couple things before, but we've never been like one-on-one. So I hope that this is a fun little thing. Week 14 was fun. I feel like it was some good things and some bad things. I went 9-4 against the spread, and then I lost a couple of heartbreaking ones. Someone didn't set their lineup against me, and I still lost.
Oh, no.
Travis Kelce. That was very heartbreaking. So such as fantasy football. But let's just hop right in. Question one is, what year did you start playing fantasy, and did you win your first league?
Let's see. I think it was this is to date myself a little bit, 1999. It was the year. It was Randy Moss's rookie year. Was that 99 or 97? I don't remember. So it was Randy Moss's rookie season. The only reason I remember that was because my first pick was, I think it was 99, and my first pick was Chris Carter. And so was fortunate enough to pick up Randall Cunningham that season also. So like the Vikings, I think I had one loss going into the playoffs and lost. It wasn't because of Gary Anderson missing a kick, but it was because my team didn't show up. But it was Mike Allstott was one of my running backs. So the traditional fullback. So again, dating myself very much here. But Chris Carter caught a lot of touchdowns that season.
Nice. Randy Moss's rookie year was 1998. So you were
maybe 98, yes,
very close. It's funny that you said that you like went in with one loss, because that was my first fantasy experience. I was so pumped. I didn't know anything about football, but I was like, I went in 12-1, coming really hot, and then I lost the first round. So because like this league that I play in has like -6 points for any missed kick, could be like a 60-yard attempt. And and that was how I lost. So crushing defeat set me up for a lot of heartbreak in football. But we love it and we hate it. What are the best parts and worst parts about playing fantasy football for you?
The best parts, let's see. I'm going to say the best parts now are, so I have three boys, and they are 9, 7, and 3. So the 3-year-old is a little too young, but I do a father and son league with each of my 2 older kids. And so the best part about it is talking about their teams with them. And the drafts are great because the dads get together, the kids get together. And it's a lot of fun to see them, sort of take hold of it. And so for the 9-year-old, for example, he is the way that we set up the league is the kids have to do a round themselves each year. So we are now in year 5 of the 9-year-old, or season 5 of the 9-year-old. And by like year 2, some of the kids were doing it by themselves because they were so into it. And so it's been fun watching, his friends, their friends, sort of enjoy that. I know it's probably not the exact answer you're looking for, but that's the best part for me now. The worst part about it is, aside from kickers, the worst part, I guess, would be, like what we saw in week 14, when you have a situation like Lamar Jackson, where you're counting on him to perform well, like, you can sort of understand the frustrations of a Travis Kelce because bad games happen. But whenever you lose a star player early in a game, that it's such a killer, especially this time of season when, you need those wins to get into the playoffs or maybe solidify your playoff spot.
Yeah, of course. First of all, I was just going to say that is a very wholesome and adorable story. I love that. I feel like people must think you're like, it's like not fair though, because you're Jamey Eisenberg, but
so my older one, the first year, we win the first? No, we lost the first year. We won the second year. And then for my 7-year-old, who was 6 at the time, we won the first year, and that was a 14-team league. And so they were like, you're cheating. It's not fair. I was like, he's 6. I have to help him.
That's super funny. I can only hope that my future children someday love fantasy football as much as I do. And there's always bad things, especially with like injuries. I feel like that's the biggest thing for me actually playing. And then like being in the fantasy community, it's like the best and the worst. I love the cool people that I've met and like the experiences that I've gotten like just from fantasy, because it's the thing that like really binds us, but then it's also can be the worst community. So at times. So all right, jumping into the actual football stuff, we are going to kick it off with a quick segment called the Burn Book, which is of course a Mean Girls reference. As fantasy managers, it is so easy to have recency bias, especially if a player has burned us either due to injuries or a bad week. So we are going to run through 5 players, and I want you to briefly tell us how confident you are in that player moving forward, or if they are in your burn book. So the first player is Dak Prescott. I know we're not completely burning Dak, but are we worried about him rest of season? He has under 13 fantasy points in 3 of the last 4 games, and his schedule is the Giants, which is not necessarily a bye, then Washington again, and then Arizona. So how do you feel about him rest of season?
I think I have him in one league for sure. I think, I'm not at the point yet where I'm going to Taysom Hill or Tua or Justin Fields or the streaming options yet. If I have, the right backup, let's say I drafted a Kirk Cousins with Dak Prescott, who obviously has had some ups and downs as well, you might consider it. But I think you look at, what Dak has at his disposal, and you referenced the last few games. The Washington game was probably the most frustrating one because, we thought, okay, rest after playing 3 games in 12 days. Coming out of that, they should have been 100% ready to go. His receiving core finally intact after, not having Amari Cooper for basically 2.5 games and CeeDee Lamb for 1.5 of those games. So you thought, okay, this is going to be the great opportunity. And Washington's secondary certainly been forgiving for a lot of quarterbacks. But I'm going to stick with him. I think it's kind of, you just have to treat him like you've treated probably Patrick Mahomes the last few, month. Lamar Jackson prior to the injury. You just have to sort of understand that there's going to have some bad moments, and you hope that they figure it out. And that's the case. I'm just going to hope that Dak figures it out against a Giants team that might be down their best defensive player if Leonard Williams doesn't play as expected.
Yeah, I'm definitely in that same camp. I caught flack on Twitter yesterday because someone just sent one of those start Dak or Taysom Hill. And I said Dak. And of course that caught me flack. And that person was like, I would like a word. All right, trust the process here, guys. I'm not too worried. He has too much talent around him, and he's so talented himself. So he just gives you way more upside than a guy like Tua, unfortunately. Yep. So, all right. The next guy we're going to talk about is James Robinson. He has been a frequent fixture on the injury report this year, laid a goose egg in week 14 versus the Titans, fumbled and never saw the ball again, which definitely worries me in terms of Urban Meyer's trust. Carlos Hyde fumbles too, but he also gets the ball back. So I don't know if that's some kind of bias that he has with Carlos Hyde. So I guess my question is, are we burning Robinson out of the RB2 locked in tier? The Jags face the Texans, Jets, and Patriots next.
I mean, just think about those teams you just listed. If you were to say superstar potential running back, which I think James Robinson still is, right? I mean, we got to, sort of still consider him in that tier, at least based on reputation from what he's done. And then you say Texans, well, they just couldn't stop Rashad Penny. The Jets, we know they can't stop anybody. So at least just for those 2 games alone, you would say it's got to be a great situation for him, right? I think, at least I know for me, I was hoping that Urban Meyer would have been fired already, just to alleviate the problems for James Robinson, which seems to be because his coach is an idiot, for lack of a better term. I'm probably still going to start him, and I hate to think that he's going to disappoint me, but you just saw it this past weekend. But the Texans matchup is too good, and I would hope that Trevor Lawrence and Darrell Bevell and the Schottenheimer and the coaching staff there and whatever semblance of common sense that Urban Meyer still has left is, this is the game you got to win. Of your remaining games. I guess the Jets as well, but this is the game in front of you that you have to win. And if you lose this game, I can't imagine Shad Khan and the ownership group there is going to be happy with you. So if they're already not unhappy with you, so I would think that James Robinson gets all the work that he can handle. So I guess I'll still start him, and maybe reluctantly. So imagine you start out, hey, I got Dak Prescott and James Robinson. Your team must be great, right? Well, maybe not so much.
Yeah, it's definitely tough. I have a lot of exposure to James Robinson right now, and I'm just hoping that, like you said, the talent and common sense kind of come through here. But Urban Meyer has driven me absolutely mad all season, and I thought for sure after this week, just from all the news, that he would be fired, or even now. I mean, there's time. You can fire him before this game. So hopefully he bounces back there. But yeah, I mean, he's like destroyed so many fantasy assets right now for me that I'm so mad at Urban Meyer. So I'm totally in your boat in terms of fire him. All right. The next guy we're going to talk about is DK Metcalf. So he was wide receiver 8.5 PPR on a per game basis through the first 8 weeks of the season. Since the Seahawks week 9 bye, he is wide receiver 79 on a per game basis and hasn't crested the double digit fantasy mark once in that 5-game span. Are we burning him out of the must start tier this week against the Rams?
I guess I hate to, hedge a little bit, but, is Jalen Ramsey playing? So we got the news before the Monday night game that, Ramsey's on the COVID list. And if he doesn't clear the COVID list, that's clearly a big piece of that defense that's missing. Ironically enough, you look at DK Metcalf's history, he does really well against the Rams. And so I feel like just the fact that his targets have been up the last 2 weeks, the fact that Russell Wilson looks like Russell Wilson again, and probably based on, I know Seattle's defense looked much better against Houston, but that's Houston, that this game has an opportunity to get up and down and become a little bit of a high scoring affair. You hope that DK Metcalf can come through. So think about where you were at. I'll ask you this. Where are you at with Jamar Chase prior to last week? Same sort of level of frustration, right? Great player, not producing. You can't bench him, right?
Right.
You can't rank him outside the starting group. So I think you just kind of stick with DK Metcalf, and if he's on your team, again, similar to James Robinson, similar to Dak Prescott, like if you have better options. Hunter Renfrow is easy to play over DK Metcalf at this point because he's been amazing. And, you stand those two guys next to each other. You're not going to say I'm starting that guy over that guy, but you probably have to based on the production and the consistency. So there are obviously certain circumstances where you're benching DK Metcalf, but for the most part, I think you just got to take your lumps and hope that this is the week that he delivers.
Yeah, you definitely have to, start your studs in this situation. You would feel so foolish if you bench DK Metcalf in the first round of the playoffs, and of course he pops off. To your point, yeah, like Russell Wilson has been looking more like Russell Wilson recently, so I'm hoping that because he's on the upswing, and if I feel like DK Metcalf could eat Hunter Renfrow. I don't actually know what Hunter Renfrow looks like, but I'm assuming he's a lot smaller. On to the next guy. It's Darnell Mooney. So for a hot second, I thought it was going to be Mooney season, but he has seriously cooled off over the last 2 weeks. 5 fantasy points last week and 2 fantasy points this week in half PPR, and was outscored by Jakeem Grant, which whatever. Are we burning Mooney and writing off this kind of tumultuous rookie season at this point?
No, not for this week. What I would do if I were the Bears, if I were Justin Fields and I were Darnell Mooney, I would say, where's Bashaud Breeland? And I'm going to find him and I'm going to line up against him and I'm going to do what every receiver for the most part has done this season. And, just go back to last week and look at Chase Claypool and look at Deontay Johnson whenever they got a chance to go against Breeland. He's just been kind of a free space for opposing wide receivers. And so I think, Andy Dalton, I know this sounds strange to say. It's going to sound strange for me to even think it, but Andy Dalton was better for Darnell Mooney than Justin Fields because he's a veteran quarterback and he's going to, not escape the pocket. He's going to look to try and make some plays down the field. And look, we saw Mooney starting to progress with Fields before the rib injury. So it's not about Justin Fields being a bad thrower or anything like that. It's just the mobility factor. When he sees something that he doesn't like, he's going to run. Andy Dalton's either going to tuck it and take a sack, or he's going to probably, try and force the ball into his wide receiver's direction. So I think, Justin Fields threw the ball well enough against the Packers, aside from a couple of, mistakes, that you can trust him in what has been such a fun matchup. Everybody that plays the Vikings ends up putting up good numbers. So I think for one more week, I think you trust it, but he's definitely fallen into that, category of Michael Pittman. There's another guy that's kind of been like, Mike Williams, guys that have gotten off to a good start and then, have had a little bit of a speed bump. I think Darnell Mooney can fight his way through it this week, and I would still probably trust him as at least a third receiver in a 3-receiver league, but, even a borderline 2-receiver league type of guy.
He is someone that I'm going to be forced to start this week, so I hope you're right about the matchup there. All right, the final guy we're going to talk about in the burn bug is Noah Fant. He has been somewhat of a victim of circumstances this season. Obviously, low volume passing offense doesn't inspire a lot of fear. And then since the return of Jerry Jeudy in week 8, Fant is tight end 38.5 PPR on a per game basis. Does Fant basically belong back on managers' waiver wires, or are you still rolling him out there?
So I'll ask you. You have 2 choices here. You could pick your favorite nickname for him, which we have at CBS. It's either Noah Cant or Noah, thank you. I tend to go with Noah, thank you. Whenever I get asked the question, will you start him? No, thank you, I will not. I think it's also, Albert O has become a problem for him as well. There's just a lot of mouths to feed in this offense. That's a run first offense, understandably so. Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon have been fantastic and have kind of turned the tide for this team. Why would you put the ball in Teddy Bridgewater's hands to have to make plays if you don't have to? I mean, he's certainly a capable quarterback, but the hope would be is by 2022, if they're able to get their hands on an Aaron Rodgers or a Russell Wilson or somebody who's an upgrade. That's why they signed these wide receivers with Sutton getting the contract and Patrick getting the contract, that you get those two veteran guys locked up with Jerry Jeudy and Noah Fant. He'll be Noah Fant by then. Then you have those great weapons with a great quarterback and everything is unleashed. And this could be one of the best teams in scoring in the NFL. But for now, I think it's just, stay away from basically all the receiving options, even what could be a shootout against the Bengals.
Yeah, I go on KOA 850, which is Colorado, Denver radio, whatnot. And every week I do like a DFS thing, but every week they ask me like, which non-running back from the Broncos do you feel good about starting? And it's just been none over the past few weeks, obviously. Yep. It's really disappointing because you see the talent, the upside. Fant is a ridiculous athletic specimen, and same with Jerry Jeudy and same with Courtland Sutton. I mean, we kind of forgot about him because he's had a couple of down seasons and like the injury and everything like that. So it is kind of criminal and like disappointing to watch that. But of course, on the other side, like we've gotten Javonte breakout season, so I can't complain too much. All right, that'll do it for the burn buck. Our next segment is called Full Send or That's Cap. I need to ask, do you ski or snowboard or do any kind of like winter sport like that?
No, I'm a Florida kid. So actually the first time I went skiing was in Colorado. So my best friend growing up moved out there. And when I was in high school, I went to go visit him, and it was in the summertime. I went to visit him once in the wintertime, but it was he had just moved out there with his parents, so skiing was not an option for either of us when we were in our teens. But the next summer, I went out to visit him, and we went to the top of some mountain where there was still some snow, and he had already started skiing a little bit, and I was just kind of putting my way down whatever was there, and then we had to walk down because the ski lift wasn't working, so it wasn't the greatest experience, but I would love to try it again.
Fair enough. Well, obviously I love skiing, and full send or go sending it usually it's like an extreme sports term where you're like going head first. You love it. Like I'm sending it. It's kind of like, do you believe in it or not? And then cap is obviously that's crap. Like that's like if someone told me like I've never lost a fantasy matchup, like that's cap, whatever. So basically I'm going to give you 5 players whose values are on the rise. And I want to know, are you sending it on that player or is it cap? So the first player is Justin Fields. He posted his second best fantasy performance to date in Sunday night's NFC North thriller, completed 18 of 33 attempts for 224 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and tacked on 74 rushing yards. Are we going full send on Fields as a viable streamer in week 15 against the Vikings' poorest secondary, or is trusting this Bears offense cap?
Yeah, I think you know where I'm going with this. Full send. I think it's a good opportunity for him. I think we started to see the slow build to where he was, hopefully becoming and may have become before the rib injury. And it was nice to see him sort of pick up where he left off. There's going to be mistakes. I think anybody who watched the game against the Packers, you saw he completely telegraphed the interception. That was a pick six. So he'll hopefully learn from that. But this matchup is just too good. The secondary, the defense for Minnesota has been so, beaten up by injuries and forgiving to opposing passers. And then you tack on what he can do as a rusher. So I'll buy it. It may burn me, but I will definitely buy him as a streamer for this week.
He was a guy that I was super high on. They had us do these like debate things for the 3rd overall pick in the draft. And I was always the one that had Justin Fields. It was like defending him. And at the beginning of the season, I just wanted to fire Matt Nagy from a cannon into the sun, just because how they were using him. He wasn't rushing, anything like that. So I really do like what I've seen of late. So hopefully that is indicative of some more trends. I am definitely picking him up on waiver wires if he is available. All right. The next guy we're going to talk about is D'Onta Foreman. This backfield has obviously been confusing, to put it lightly, since the loss of Derrick Henry. Foreman did lead the depth chart over Dontrell Hilliard and Jerry McNichols in this game. Are we going full send on Foreman as a potential RB2 play, or is trusting any of the Titans running backs cap?
It's such an interesting situation because, like you said, it's crowded, and if you look at the snap counts, you're gonna have to sort of break it down by when they were competitive in the game in the beginning of the game versus toward the end of the game. So Foreman did the majority of the work early in the game, and then when they had the lead, he got a little bit dinged up in the game. So I don't know how much that factored into what he was going to do later in the game. But if you watch that Vikings Steelers game, I mean, you and I could have probably run for 50 or 60 yards with the holes that Dalvin Cook was running through. The Steelers' run defense is a mess right now. And so I think just based on opportunity and, the Titans, I think, still trying to define what their identity is. And clearly their identity for the last 2+ seasons has been Derrick Henry in a power running game. And Deontay Foreman gives them the best bet for that. So I don't think it's a full send, but it's closer to being a send than a cap. So I'm going to probably lean that way just based on the matchup and the opportunity that he's going to get.
Fair enough. Yeah, I've just been hoping that one of them emerges as the guy. He's actually someone that I benched in a lot of leagues just to see kind of how things shook out. I mean, it's not necessarily as frustrating or confusing as the Eagles backfield, but it's up there. I just came off of a waivers podcast where it was rank the Eagles in terms of priority. And I was like, I can't, I don't really know. It's probably Boston Scott, but maybe it's not. So yeah, super frustrating. All right. The next guy we're going to talk about is Saquon Barkley. He's actually looked a lot better since returning from injury in week 11, 16 rushing attempts for 64 yards and a touchdown and 3 catches for 31 yards. That said, the Chargers run defense does make a lot of running backs look good. The Giants take on Dallas, against whom he was injured in week 5. Are we going full send on Barkley as an RB1 in that matchup, or does the injury and kind of offense make that cap?
So if you're going to make me say RB1, then it's cap. If you're going to say starting, then yes, I'll still go full send. I'm obviously not benching Saquon Barkley. I think you have to be really risky to, let's say, trust whoever's going to start for the Dolphins against the Jets, because we know they got their COVID situation. You said it, the Eagles. Are you trusting Boston Scott over Saquon Barkley yet? Are you trusting Deontay Foreman over Saquon Barkley yet? I'm sure the answer to most of those is no. But if we have week 15 and still the Sony Michel show for the Rams, I'm starting Michel over Saquon Barkley. If, Chase Edmonds, who's not playing Monday night, is still out, James Conner is an easy start over Saquon Barkley. So there are plenty of, other circumstances that I'm sure we can look at and say, Saquon Barkley does not have to be considered a must start option, but you have to be encouraged by the workload. I'd like to see who the quarterback is, because I think that'll matter. I'd like to see who the receiving core is, because we got Shepard back and Galladay back. If Tony's back, then maybe we finally see what this Giants offense was supposed to look like. And I think that'll help Saquon Barkley. So I'll hedge again. So if it's a starting running back, then it's, full send. If it's a RB1 top 12 guy, then it's a cap situation.
Fair enough. I had to throw him in there because in the mock draft that I did with you guys, I got roasted for taking Saquon Barkley so early. So that was an early L for me in that mock. But it's good to see him kind of looking a little bit like himself again. And this Giants offense does have potential. It's just been so banged up. So to your point, if we can see, all 3 receivers healthy, I would like to definitely see what Barkley looks like in that offense. All right. The next guy we're going to talk about is KJ Osborne. I picked him up in so many leagues and started him in so many leagues. He's found the end zone in 2 straight games, tied a season high 9 targets in this past game with Adam Thielen sidelined. If Thielen misses the Vikings week 15 matchup, which I kind of assume is going to happen, given the high ankle sprain, it's against the Bears. Are we going full send on Osborne once again as a plug and play streamer?
Full send. Absolutely. This is a guy that's got so much potential. I go back to the preseason. So, we're lucky enough at CBS. We have a lot of NFL reporters and guys that go out to, different training camp tours and whatnot. And so anybody that's listened to our show, you know that Pete Prisco, who's a longtime NFL writer, he does a lot of great stuff for us on Fantasy Football Today. And it's like a running joke because I mention Pete all the time, but I trust Pete as much as anybody. And he was with the Vikings. He knows Keenan McCardle, who's the wide receivers coach there for years because he covered him in Jacksonville. And, Keenan was telling him, you got to watch this kid. You got to watch this kid. He's not going to get a lot of opportunities because of the top 2 guys, obviously. But if he ever gets a chance, he's going to be a star. He's got star potential. Just raving about KJ Osborne. And so, it's one of those things where, the target numbers against the Steelers were nice. It was the one big play really that saved him, but he's got the potential that as long as they keep featuring him, and you said it best, if Adam Thielen is still out, they're going to keep featuring him. And so I have no hesitation to buy in fully to KJ Osborne. And this is a guy I think that could be a difference maker for a lot of fantasy managers as long as Adam Thielen stays out.
Yeah, when the Thielen news kind of came out, I was not sure if it was going to be more of like a Tyler Conklin type situation or KJ Osborne. But yeah, I mean, he's a guy that I picked up, of course, after the first week and then dropped him and picked him up again. And it is nice to see him have success now, even if it had to take an injury. All right, the final guy we're going to talk about, I already know kind of where you're going with this one, but Hunter Renfrow. He isn't the sexiest name, but he has strung together 3 consecutive 100-yard games, finishes a top 14 receiver in 5 of the last 6 games. This past game, part of that may have been game script, as the Raiders trailed by a significant margin in that game for pretty much all of it. Are we going full send on him as, like, let's say like a high-end wide receiver 2 in week 15 against the Browns?
I got to tell you, first of all, as somebody with a dad bod, to see him excelling, he's very sexy. So he's a very sexy man, sexy name.
I just meant like a buzzy name, not like like the names that people want to talk about.
I'm totally kidding. He's been great. And I think the thing we got to keep an eye on is Darren Waller. So the numbers have clearly spiked. Since the Ruggs situation. So you can feel comfortable enough about starting him, obviously, but the numbers spiked even more without Darren Waller on the field for the last couple of weeks. So. If Waller's back, you might have some hesitation, but Derek Carr is so dialed into Hunter Renfrow right now, and it makes sense. He's been such a good red zone threat. He's making plays down the field, so his depth of target is certainly increased over the last couple of weeks because they needed him to. He's you think about the great slot receivers over the last, 10 years, 15 years, however far you want to go back. You can put him with the recent stretch of games, Wes Welker, Julian Edelman, he's doing those type of things. Jarvis Landry, those type of things, so it's been just fun to watch. And, we always get a few of these guys every season that, you kind of discount at the start of the season. Oh, he'll have 50 catches, he'll have 70 catches, but he's not going to do anything with it. Well, you've seen he's done a lot with it, and it's only gotten better as the year has gone on. So he's going to be another guy that helps a lot of people win fantasy championships this season. So absolutely full send until proven otherwise. And it might not happen because, you may have one down week. Okay, you still got to go back to him. If he has 2 or 3 down weeks, your season's over, but you got to just take, your lumps with what he's done and buy into it for sure.
No, I'm super excited about him. Unfortunately, I did have a couple shares of Foster Moreau in the last week, so that his performance may have come out at the expense of Moreau's dud for the second week in a row. But yeah, it's been really exciting to watch him. I think like initially we were kind of thinking maybe it was going to be split with like Bryan Edwards, but Renfrow has clearly distinguished himself as the wide receiver 1 in this offense. So that has been really fun to watch. All right, Jamey, we have 9 more rapid fire questions and I will get you out of here. Question 13 is, name one player you just can't quit or you always find yourself making excuses for. So prior to this year, that was Joe Mixon for me, but I don't have to make excuses for Joe Mixon anymore.
Well, let's see. It feels like I've been defending Antonio Gibson a lot this year, so this is going to be an interesting week, coming off a rough game. You have some concerns with the quarterback position. I don't know if he's the type of tenure you're looking for in terms of longevity, but it was defending him coming into the season, defending him at the start of the season, and now continuing to defend him again, after one bad game. I'm sure I'll get a lot of questions this week. So I guess Antonio Gibson qualifies.
He is a guy that I'm totally in the same boat. I wrote a whole article about how I loved him this preseason, and like all signs to me just like pointed to it. And like, obviously we take our L's and stuff, but this one kind of hurt more just because I just loved his whole story last year too. So he was a league winner for, I feel like, at least in one of my leagues for me. So disappointing for sure. All right. Are you ready to crown Jonathan Taylor the undisputed 101 of drafts next year? And if not, who else is in this conversation?
Yeah, just stay healthy, man. Just stay healthy. That guy, if he comes out of the season the way he's been going and steamrolling opponents, and this is a fun week coming up against the Patriots because they're going to try and do everything they can to stop him. But yeah, he's easily established himself as that guy, and it's been nice to see the growth from the end of last year to the carrying over to all season so far in 2021.
Yeah, that to your point, he just had such a hot end to the season, and he went a little higher in fantasy drafts than I was willing to really reach for, which obviously now it wasn't a reach. But yeah, I mean, he was just super, super popular and for good reason. So
Yeah.
I do feel like he will go 101. All right.
That's gonna be one of the crazier stories is, how many people got him later than he should have gone because
Right.
of the Carson Wentz and Quentin Nelson injuries and him falling into, in some cases, into round two. I mean, it's a big boost to a lot of fantasy managers right now, I'm sure.
For sure. All right. There may not be another Cordero Patterson, but maybe predict one player that you think could have an unexpected breakout next year.
Oh, unexpected breakout next year. Let's see. Rondale Moore, kind of feels like that type of player, if you want to make any sort of comparisons, for a guy that can do some things in the backfield and certainly has a creative play caller and a great quarterback around him. Not that Cordero Patterson has those things in particular, but I want to see what happens, if AJ Green moves on. I believe Christian Kirk is entering free agency. I'm not 100% sure on that, but if there's an opportunity to free up some targets and chances to make plays, you've seen it in some spurts. DeAndre Hopkins, who knows how much he's going to stay at that elite level. So Kyler Murray may have to start to, spread the ball around even more. So I'm excited about Rondale Moore. I want to see where the future holds for him.
Yeah, he's actually one of those guys that I have been making excuses for. At least I was making excuses for at the beginning of the season. He's now not maybe in that conversation anymore. He and like Rashad Bateman, I feel like were guys that I was just like coming out of the draft, like so hyped about. So certainly would like to see that breakout next year. Which NFL coach is most infuriating for fantasy?
Oh, you said it, Matt Nagy. That guy's got to go. Urban Meyer's got to go. So the two of them probably right now. Obviously, Bill Belichick for years. Just because of the screwy nature of how he just prioritizes wins over helping his guys put up points. Why would he ever want to do that?
It's so rude.
Pete Carroll is frustrating because he's always optimistic about everything. I'll tell you a quick story. So I'm lucky enough being at CBS for as long as I have been. And I hope we get back to, some sense of normalcy, because I usually go to all the owners meetings, and they have a coaches breakfast, during the owners meetings, where the media gets to, ask all the coaches, whatever you want to, essentially. It's a free for all. And because I don't cover a team, I just bounce around from table to table. And so Sean Payton burned me a few times. The biggest one was Colby Fleener, if you remember him. So it was after Jimmy Graham left, they had brought in Colby Fleener, and looked me in my eye. I thought we made a connection. He told me Colby Fleener was going to be great. I told everybody that listens to our shows and reads all my stuff, Colby Fleener is the biggest sleeper, biggest breakout candidate you could find. Yeah, I still hear about Colby Fleener every now and then. So the Sean Payton will always be on this list of coaches. He's not going anywhere. He shouldn't go anywhere. He's been great for fantasy, but that always kind of, sticks in my side a little bit when I think about that.
That is an interesting one. Yeah, I feel like the ones that come to mind are, of course, Bill Belichick, and maybe even like, I'm still salty about the Cliff Kingsbury, Chase Edmonds, David Johnson thing from a couple of years ago.
Yes.
I totally got trolled on that. And I actually, like, side note, like tangent, I literally used to set this guy's lineup for him that like I ghost managed his team. Okay. And he had Chase Edmonds and David Johnson. And I started David Johnson. And he literally messages me and said something like, you left some guy on our bench that had like 35 points. And I'm like, first of all, some guy, I love that. Like, you don't even know who he is. And it just like, of course, in the stupid, like social media team thing, like you should have started Chase Edmonds. So he goes up there. Kyle Shanahan, also honorable mention, or dishonorable mention for me. Just trusting any 49ers running backs, though, of course, Elijah Mitchell has been a really nice, pleasant surprise this year. Absolutely. If you could change one setting in every league, what would it be?
One setting. So I brought this up to our tech team at CBS once upon a time, and I think it still would be relevant, is that you should be allowed to, if a player gets hurt, or is a surprise inactive, that you should just have somebody from your bench just be elevated into that spot and you get those points, because this is supposed to be a fun game, and so you don't want to go like the team QB route or the team running back route or any of those things, So like, for example, it's easy to say, okay, Lamar Jackson gets hurt, you just get Tyler Huntley's points, and that's the easy answer. But I think, if somebody goes out early in a game, so let's say it's a first quarter injury, you should be allowed to. Now, there's obviously a lot of gray area in this, because somebody could have 2 touchdowns in the first quarter and then gets hurt, and you wouldn't want to replace that player. So it shouldn't just be, a black and white type of thing. But if somebody does get hurt, like a Lamar Jackson, or, pick whatever injury you want to, why ruin somebody's week out of something that you can't control? You set your lineup with the idea that these are my best players, and then something happens to that player, your fantasy team shouldn't be penalized. So I think there should be some designation, whether it's a commissioner designation or just the league designation, that injured player, you designate that guy every week. So this running back gets hurt, that running back is the points I get, this wide receiver, et cetera. But it's got to be, within a certain amount of time frame. So I think the first quarter is probably the best way to do it.
That's a really interesting concept. I've actually never heard that, but it's a cool, like, best ball concept that would eliminate at least some of the frustration for managers. But yeah, maybe it would have to be like limited to like first quarter injuries or something like that to make it be fair. Question, was a Joe Flacco ever elite? Yes or no?
Oh boy. For a season, for a playoff, he was elite. As a player, no. For a career, no. But for a brief moment in time, he was a very elite quarterback and won some big games for the Ravens.
You have one of the more optimistic, nicer answers to that one, by the way, of the like 15 people that I've had on this show. Who should managers' top waiver ad be this week?
Obviously this is such a tricky thing because everybody's got different league sizes, but we mentioned one KJ Osborne, so if he's still out there, go get him at the wide receiver spot. Obviously Rashad Penny at the running back spot. If you want to go like really deep, I guess Duke Johnson might be the only Dolphins healthy running back at this point, because Lindsey, Gaskin, and Savon Ahmed are all on the COVID list. And so Duke Johnson against the Jets, you could do a lot worse than that matchup. So that's probably, the deep option you could look at there. Craig Reynolds, clearly, if he's still the guy for Detroit. But if the top 2 guys for me, and I write the waiver column for CBS, so it's Rashad Penny and KJ Osborne at their respective positions.
Interesting. Yeah, I feel like it would be close between KJ Osborne and Devontae Parker for me, especially if we have like no running backs on that team left. But yeah, that would be pretty much my top 3. How many attempts would it take you to make an extra point?
Oh boy, from how far? Oh no, well, you got an extra point. Yeah, I was thinking field goal. A long time. A long time. Probably I'll say 15 tries.
15 tries is like not that many. I feel like it would take me, like, you could put me out there for 200 tries and I don't think I would make it. So
I bet if somebody showed you the right way to do it, same thing with me. If they showed me the right way to do it, we'll probably get it done.
We had this, I mentioned this on a few podcasts, but we did this thing on the street where we were asking, this is when I was living in Denver and the All-Star game was there. And I was asking just random dudes on the street, how many batting practice pitches it would take them to hit a ball out of Coors Field. You get the juice ball and everything like that. And the range of answers was amazing. There were some people that were like, oh, infinity, I'm not getting it out of the infield. You could give me the corked bat and it's not leaving. and then there was another guy that was like from Boston. He's like, 2, 1 warm up and I'm knocking out of the park. So very interesting to see people's kind of like gauge on their athletic abilities. All right. Yeah. Finally, if you had one cardinal rule to tell someone just getting into fantasy this year, what would it be?
One cardinal rule just getting into fantasy this year. Don't take it seriously. I mean, it's fun. It's a game. Clearly most people, whether they know it or not, they're competitive and, you want to win, but it should be something that you have fun. It's such a great introduction into the sport. And that goes for any fantasy sport. It's the thing I try to teach my kids and their friends that play it. It's just such a fun way to watch, the sport from a different perspective, because you don't just have to focus on a team you like. You can focus on the entire league. It keeps you interested. It's a good way to learn math, for the little guys, little ones out there. But it's just a fun introduction into the sport. So just, have fun with it. If you lose, you lose. And that should keep you coming back for more. I mean, like you brought up your experience of going, with 1 loss. If you won, you might've thought it was too easy, so, you got just close enough and you had the thrill of victory enough that it brought you back for more. And I think that's the thing, you want to be coming back for more to try and get that ultimate goal. And, hopefully that's the end result, is that you win at least one time, but just have fun with it.
Super, super important. It's just like a side little tangent. I did not grow up a football fan at all. And I got into football through fantasy completely. So I do have I feel like different not better or worse, just different perspective, because I have almost no fandom. I root for the Panthers, but I really don't have like the ingrained fandom that some people had, that I do think kind of just makes your like difference, like your judgments different and everything like that. And I literally, my boyfriend at the time, who was helping me with my fantasy team, had me listening to the CBS fantasy podcast every single day. He was like, I'm not setting your lineups. So you got to listen to these guys, and you got to listen to, there were like 3. I had to listen to that 444 and the ESPN one every single day. And that is how I learned how to even play fantasy. So you guys were super, super influential in like my entire trajectory and growth in this industry. So it's been really, really cool to even get to interact with you. All right, that will do it for this round of 21 questions with our esteemed guest, Jamey Eisenberg. Jamey, I cannot thank you enough for joining me during this insanely busy time. Please tell everyone where they can find you at this NFL season.
Well, first off, thank you for the story. That was great to hear, and again, make me feel old, but I appreciate that.
It was very recent. I mean, like
nice to hear that we could help start your career, and obviously it's fun to watch. Just getting to see, following you on social media and getting to talk to you and do some stuff with you. It's been great to see your trajectory. So keep going. You're doing a great job. You can find us cbssports.com, CBS Sports HQ. It's our 24-hour streaming network. That's where we find our Fantasy Football Today show, which is Monday through Friday at noon Eastern, and then Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern. But podcasts, so we're all over the place like everybody else in this space. Just Google CBS and you'll find us.
Awesome. Yeah. If you ever look at old emails, I was literally emailing you guys mailbag questions every week. So yeah, it is super, super cool to meet you. As a reminder, Sean Kerner and Chris Ravont are here on the Fantasy Plex every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, giving you guys all the DFS, waiver wire, and rankings info you need to help you dominate your fantasy leagues. I will be back this Thursday with our final mailbag episode of the year. Thanks again for listening. Please rate and review our show on Apple Podcasts. Download us wherever you like to listen, and we will see you next time on the Fantasy Flex presented by PrizePicks. Peace out, y'all.